We're talking about when clients lie in therapy. Surely a client would never lie, Rory.
Well, I think we have to admit that we all tell lies, but I think when it becomes an issue in the therapy room is where it becomes absolutely clear that the client isn't telling the truth. And this can be seen maybe when they tell you a story in one session and then they forget what they've told you and tell you a completely different story about the same thing in the other session. Because if you do tell lies, you need a really good memory. And it can be a bit off-putting for a therapist because we're taught in training that this is all about the truth and revealing our truth. But when clients are not being honest, it can be very tricky. And I think what we're going to be doing today, Ken, is we're going to be talking about some of the reasons why clients may not be comfortable telling the truth.
Beautifully introduced there, Rory. I want to bring in another word here for lying. I want to say lying or concealment, because that can be a form of lying. It is very common, as it is in life. We maybe put ourselves forward differently to how we truly are. And I think it's accepted in the world. You'll hear people saying, if you're not lying on your CV, then you're not doing it properly. And those kind of things are the things that we hear. And it seems like being untruthful or hiding parts of ourselves are ways of being successful in everyday life. And I guess we all do that at some level. However, within therapy, we want to welcome the entirety of that person into therapy to be seen as they truly are. And I think understanding the lying, it's not necessarily a blatant untruth that this person is deliberately telling you. It may be that they're just trying to hide a part of self that they don't feel is acceptable. It may have been that they have a journey that shows them that telling the truth within their family environment leads to unrest, it leads to them being hurt, it leads to really unpleasant outcomes. So therefore, being a little untrue from time to time is a survival mechanism for that person. When somebody is speaking to us and we maybe pick up something that doesn't ring 100% true from perhaps something they said earlier, as you beautifully said there, Rory, we can forget and then restate something quite differently. We wouldn't want to be rushing in and going, hold on a second, I think you've been lying to me. How would we gently handle that, Rory?
I think the first position, certainly from a person-centered position, is all behavior is goal-directed. Rogers said that. And if we have that in the forefront of our mind, that this behavior of not being truthful is a way of protecting self, is a way of maybe going through an historic pattern of behavior where it wasn't safe to tell the truth. So it's easier to stay away from the truth, to stay away from that bad outcome. And it is, in fact, a trauma response. Now, your question about how we deal with it, I think that you're absolutely right, Ken. What we don't do is we say, oh, hang on a second, last week you said this and now he's saying that, because that isn't the way we should be dealing with clients. What we should be doing is, first of all, exercising, I think, wisdom. And we should hold in our mind that why is this pattern of behavior evolving in the therapy room? And just wait. And what will happen, there will be an opportunity where, for instance, someone, I remember banging the arm of the chair with their fist and saying, I'm not angry at all about it. And I said, you say you're not angry, but I noticed that you're nearly knocking the arm of the chair off with your fist. And I just left it there. And it was an incredible pivoting point in that relationship because I gently held the mirror up. And what happened was the client realized that actually I'd seen this kind of incongruence, which is what we're talking about. And I didn't over-challenge, I didn't criticize, I didn't judge, Ken. I didn't judge. Yeah. And that opened the gateway for a very interesting piece of work through the arc of that encounter.
Yeah, I think that didn't judge. There's the key, Rory. There's the absolute key of that. There's generally a reason behind why this person may be concealing or putting a different version of themselves forward. And what's interesting, research that I came across suggested that therapists are not very good at spotting or detecting untruths in a client. I realize when I'm in a therapeutic setting, I'm there with unconditional positive regard. There's not a filter going, hold on a minute, I wonder if what they're telling me is the truth or not. I'm trying best I can to be in their frame of reference. It's interesting that we might not be that good at picking it up, but I think you've beautifully said, Rory, that it may show itself in clues that just don't ring true. We might have a felt sense inside, go, that seems to be a little bit different. And maybe there's an incongruence in that. And certainly in the person-centered model, we're shown highlighting congruence. If a person says one thing and feels a different thing, we might reflect on that incongruence within that person. And maybe that same kind of very gentle approach can be used if we do find that something doesn't ring true, but it only works within a strongly formed relationship. And what are those functions of a client maybe concealing or lying to us? Why might they do that? And I think that's a really good place for us to start by understanding what that means for us and helping us gain that empathy towards that client, Rory.
Yes, and I've certainly supervised practitioners who've felt a little hurt or wounded that they're working really hard with this client and the client's not being honest with them. And I think the first position is that clients should be able to tell lies in therapy. It's their time, it's their space to be whoever they want to be. And what we shouldn't be doing is policing clients. However, when the opportunity arises, the key for me is to gently challenge that incongruence. And also, I do think that the reasons for lying may lie in quite a subconscious place. And I come back to this non-judgmental, that non-judgmental attitude and patience will, I think, in some cases bring rewards.
Wow. Yes, very much. And it's interesting, honesty is not a prerequisite for therapy. It might be a therapeutic goal. Very often when a client is coming in, there's much of themselves that they hide from protection, from vulnerability, and it's understanding the whys of that. Addressing deception when we come across it and normalizing that, not making a thing about it, and recognizing this is part of the process. There's no shaming here. There's no you did that wrong. I've caught you out. It raises questions, I think. And practical ways of working with it is normalizing that concealment, curiosity over confrontation, naming relational processes that you're going through. Key takeaway, Rory.
I think the key takeaway is don't take it personally if a client is telling lies. But if it becomes a pattern within the therapy room, certainly want to look at in supervision. Also, remember that all behaviour is goal-directed. Understand the goal and you'll understand the behaviour. Roger's own words. And it's very useful to view lies through a trauma-informed lens because lying is a defence mechanism. And defense mechanisms are put in place as a form of protection. It can be protection for the ego or the self, but it can actually be in another place at another time. Being trauma-informed, looking at through a trauma-informed lens and listening to the totality of the client's story may give you a different view and give you an approach that you can gently challenge, but without reactivating that historic trauma. It's very nuanced.